Join me for a conversation with Eddie Mockus as we talk about his work as a licensed psychologist and founder of the Boulder Center for Family and Behavior Health. His journey has taken him through the outdoors and into the office in order to support kids in navigating through anxiety, growth, stress in the society we live in today. Don't miss this one. Welcome to the Avid Adventurer. I'm your host, Dave Secunda, founder of Avid for Adventure, and I am psyched you're here. Each week, just like today, I'll bring you an interview with a kiddo, young adult, or parent as they share not only the details of their noteworthy outdoor pursuits, but also how they navigate risk, challenge, setbacks, and service in their journey. It'll bring a smile to your face, and you'll feel your heart expand as you get to know the inner landscapes of these athletes. After listening, I know you'll feel uplifted and ready for your own next Avid adventure. So let's dive in. Welcome, Eddie Mockus. I am so pleased to have some time with you today and to extend my relationship with you to this new realm of conversation here. I know you through a few different things that kind of all come together to be this person who I've interacted with over time. You are a licensed psychologist and the founder of the Boulder Center for Family and Behavior Health. So working with kids and families to kind of lead the lives that they want to lead going forward and supporting them in that. I know you as an outdoor athlete in some of the endeavors that you have shared with me. And I also know you as a speaker and an educator, and I've had the opportunity to hear you bring value to the entire leadership team at Avid for Adventure in a huge way. So it's really with great anticipation that I had this on the calendar and welcome the opportunity to sit down with you today.
Thanks, David. It's a huge honor. I was really excited when I saw your invite come through, and you can't say no to such a good human and such a good organization as well. So the honor is clearly mine.
Well, with the lens of letting some of our listeners know a few of the different sides about you, share something that you found significant in the outdoors, either that you're proud of or excited about, or even looking forward to. Like when you think about the outdoors, what comes forward for you today?
Yeah. When we ask this question of like impact, my brain goes to like past impacts of like what brought me into loving outside, as well as kind of like the current way I enjoy outside and possibly what the future holds. It's like kind of a triple decker question for me. When I was an undergrad, shout out to Upper Limits in Bloomington, Illinois. I worked for a climbing gym out there. And I was a climbing instructor for a while, merit badge instructor for a while. And it was the first kind of real time in my life where I saw how like outdoor education, outdoor sports, and outdoor lifestyle could be something that is actually an option people can choose legitimately for themselves. And it just working for that gym and taking some of the trips with some of my climbing partners at the time really opened my eyes to what actually felt possible for me in my life, not just on a career path kind of perspective. And starting my work with that gym changed everything, I think, about what I do and how I do it in a really big way.
Thank you for that. And share a little bit more to just give folks another angle on who you are. If you were to complete the sentence, if you really knew me, you'd know that.
Sure.
What would that be for you?
Yeah. Yeah, right on the outside, I'm a licensed psychologist, and I love everything about doing kind of skills-based therapy and family-based therapy. which is something I believe in strongly, but outside of that, which is often in a world separate from kind of behavior psychology or cognitive behavior psychology, is if you really, really knew me, you'd know how spiritual I am, how energetically minded I am. Even in these past few years, how big of a deep dive I've taken in that direction to kind of really not just practice, I don't know, being a good steward of my thoughts and my actions, but really being a good steward of learning my heart and what my heart is telling me, and kind of being more heart open and actually allowing things like intuition to guide me, not necessarily being such an academic and using all my logic to guide, my every move. And I think if you really knew me, you'd know how life opening that path has been for me.
Mm. Well, that's certainly been my experience of you, that you kind of dance pretty effectively between these two worlds of academia and heart-driven kind of spiritual guidance in a way that they really just kind of meld together into who you are. Say a little bit more about that head versus heart, and how you bring them into a clinical practice as well, and kind of how you fit those to the particular individual or particular need. So, when you're working with someone, what does it mean to be even aware of or accessing that heart-driven or spiritual foundation of your knowing, in addition to that academic background and book knowledge? Like, talk a little bit more about how this come together.
That's a great question. I feel like the best way to answer that question is through the smallest psychotherapy history lesson.
Let's hear it.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So history of psychotherapy, right? In a way, you've got the well-known godfather of psychotherapy, Sigmund Freud. And, he, in his time, kind of believed in a lot of ways you are your thoughts. And if you are your thoughts, then the goal of psychotherapy is to figure out subconscious thoughts, right? Which is why we do dream interpretation when you're doing kind of Freudian-based work, because it's not what we say to people that's important necessarily, but it's what you're not saying that is really who you are. And so, so there's a big push to really figure out what's under the surface, and then you kind of shift into maybe more modern day evidence-based work, cognitive behavior therapy, which is a big term in psychotherapy, which basically, in a nutshell, is that well, we're not exactly our thoughts, right? So just because I have an impulsive thought here, it doesn't necessarily mean I am that thing. But rather, if we kind of understand the relationship between thoughts and actions and our feelings, well, if you can kind of learn to sort of counter thought with other thoughts, if you can kind of learn to sort of manifest positive thought into your thought set, then you can ultimately change how you feel or act. Or likewise, if you're in a situation maybe where you're nervous and you normally want to just get the heck out of there, well, if you practice staying for just a little bit longer, practice staying instead of retreating, then you can ultimately change the way you feel about some of these situations and yourself. But then enter kind of more modern age kind of CBT work. Sometimes we find with some humans, whether humans that are kind of a bit more emotion forward, or maybe their emotions continue to come up despite my work to try to talk back to them. We're learning that sometimes it causes even more anxiety or stress. We're like, what am I doing wrong with this whole CBT thing? Because these thoughts keep coming up. So, enter the world of acceptance and commitment therapy, or DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, where, I promise I'm getting to the point of spirituality.
It's a good point. I'm with you. Well,
we're getting close.
Following the evolution here, yeah.
Yeah, we're ultimately, now there's this belief of you can allow yourself to have any thought, any feeling, any worry, any mood that you want to, because you are absolutely not a product of your thoughts. And
Mm-hmm.
instead of the goal of this work is to stop you from thinking the things you don't want to think anymore, rather, you're giving yourself permission to allow yourself to think and feel what you think and feel. Because your brain is ultimately in control of a lot of the thoughts that you've had. Your past training and programming in life is ultimately in control of the thoughts that you get. But you yourself are actually in more control than you think of what you can focus on. And me being such an academic and this logic-minded academic, historically, I tended to fall in this spectrum of, if I just think it through, if I think it through, then I'll be able to problem solve it through.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm learning that if I could just set my thoughts aside for a minute, and if I could just feel it through, meaning, I can ask myself, what are the things I know that are important to me? And where do I feel that in my body? And
Mm-hmm.
and despite what my thoughts are telling me, like, what is my heart telling me? Like where in the center of my stomach am I feel like I'm being pulled towards or away from? And I'm actually allowing my body to be more of a teacher of what to do next, rather than just my
Mm-hmm.
thoughts. And
Mm-hmm.
um, and so I try to, I think, teach some of the kids and the parents that we work with that, yes, there's a lot of ways to, intellectualize your situation. There's a lot of ways to think through a situation, but sometimes, people come to me, looking for certain answers, and I try to teach them that you already kind of got the answers inside of you. Let's just learn how
Mm-hmm.
to slow down and listen. And, you know, let's try to let everyone in my circle, right? If it's kids, maybe it's their parents, let's help them slow down and listen as well. And the miraculous things happen when we can just finally learn how to hear each other. And when our kids can feel like, oh, I'm actually seen in what it is I'm going through. Sometimes there's no traditional therapeutic work that has to happen at all, because that is the therapeutic work, is learning that I'm seen
Mm-hmm.
for everything I am, and I'm seen for what I need, and that's perfectly okay. And that doesn't come from this logic brain academia. That comes from within, um, and that comes from learning to trust within. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I know you've dedicated your career, a lot of it, to working with kids and families, but with kids a lot. Um, Talk about this a little bit as far as the application in kids who, as we all know, and it's been my experience as well, are faced with kind of waves of anxiety and stress, and and kind of some tough circumstance. And so, you know, in just kind of settling in to even kind of acknowledge and feel those, can that, what tools do you bring forward so that it doesn't just become overwhelming for somebody to be able to potentially feel and acknowledge that stress or anxiety, um, but not be overcome by it?
Yeah, great question. It's a multi-layer response. Maybe we'll simplify it. We'll put it in 2 layers. Layer one, number one, I find myself teaching a lot, as much as I can. First and foremost, that it's okay to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Said another way, it's actually okay to feel,
Mm-hmm.
and that having big feelings is not a negative vulnerability. Having big
So how
feelings.
do you teach that? How do you bring that forward experientially
Mhm.
for a kid who might be a middle school kid, the
Mhm.
ultimate
Yeah,
moment of
yeah,
anti-vulnerability?
yeah. Right.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Yeah, so in 2 ways. One is literally just starting with that phrase, and just saying, "Hey, let's just try on for a minute that
Mm-hmm.
this isn't as vulnerable as you think it is. Let's try on for a minute that
Mm-hmm.
you having these feels doesn't make you less than, doesn't make you weak, doesn't make you
Mm-hmm.
any not non-confidence, have non-confidence. That's not a word.
Mm-hmm.
But it's this just makes you human being having a human being experience, and let's just pretend for a minute
Mm-hmm.
that that's perfectly okay.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, And so, maybe we have a discussion on how absurd of an idea that is, because it doesn't feel that way, right?
Vulnerability is the ultimate superpower. Yeah.
And you say, no
Yeah.
chance.
Got it.
Yeah, yeah. Once it's Marvel
Yeah.
movies, then maybe you will start to believe it. Once we kind of plant that idea that like maybe you are in fact okay, even though you're feeling vulnerable. Maybe it is in fact okay to feel scared about this thing, because of course you are, right? The first thing I want to do is just say, first and foremost, you're not broken for feeling this way. Nothing's wrong with you for feeling this way. In fact, most of you do. Everyone does. Even as an adult, I continue to, right? And then from there, we try to get a little experiential about it, right? Maybe with some grounding techniques, which is fancy for, if we're thinking about a situation that makes us feel upset, or in our bodies, we notice we get a little activated, meaning my heart's starting to race, my head's starting to swirl, my thoughts are starting to ramp, my hands are getting sweaty. Maybe what we can do is just pause in that moment, in some of those micro experiences, and still say, hey, like, while I'm literally sitting here, like, look around the room, right? What's actually happening to you? Even though you have this feeling, and it's very real, but look around the room. What's actually happening? Right? Notice how nothing's actually happening. Notice how safe you actually are. Notice how, if you just stood here for a while, nothing negative would come to you, right? And if we have enough of these experiences where, look at me, I notice that I'm having these sensations in my body, and I'm also noticing around me that nothing negative is actually happening. Eventually, we start believing that this feeling doesn't have to rule me. This feeling doesn't have to be something I have to run from. In fact, this is a feeling that I can have alongside of me doing what's important to me at the same time.
And how can you potentially utilize the natural environment in the outdoors as kind of an on-ramp, or a laboratory or a facilitatory environment for these sorts of things to move forward? Is that something that you've thought about or dabbled in?
Oh, the future Eddie in 3 years, I'd love to have more experiential work as part of a service I can offer. Yeah, I'm really trying to learn how I can integrate the two. There's no traditional CBT therapist out there going on hikes with their families, or teaching everyone how to rappel, or teaching everyone how to belay and get a little funky on the second and third flat iron. But I would love that to be in my future, because I think it's a very natural way to teach that, being in the outdoors, right? We've got this concept of type 1, type 2 fun. Type 2 fun is where you work a little bit, to get to where you want to be. And, when you work a little bit, that activates all of the same central nervous system pieces that anxiety does, that stress does, that worry does.
Yeah.
Right? My heart rate's going up a little bit. I'm getting tired, like I'm getting thirsty. My mouth feels dry. My hands are sweaty. My legs are burning. If we can learn to just go out and do things like that and realize, look how capable I am while I do this. Like, look how okay I am, even though I'm in a position of discomfort.
Yeah,
it
makes me think about just the world of perceived risk versus actual risk. And, for example, getting a kid up in a top rope, belayed position way off the ground, where there is this opportunity to deliberately lean into the discomfort in a realm of safety. It's kind of like, metaphorically what you're talking about in the room there, which might be talking about in a social setting, but being in that physical setting, and then, I do think of it as kind of this idea of a laboratory. It is an opportunity for a kiddo or an adult to lean into that discomfort in a very controlled environment, and to just experience that safety. It's also interesting because the outdoors also does carry real consequence as well, and so it is that full laboratory of also understanding where that line of demarcation lies in actual risk
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. And yeah, you get a family belaying together, right? You teach a kid how to belay a parent, and actually does belay that parent, maybe with a backup belayer so they don't go for a ride if, the parent takes a big enough fall.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get a kid doing that and then you talk 5 minutes afterwards. Like, how was that? Knowing that your son had you, that your daughter had you. How was that knowing that you literally were able to help your mom kind of get through a thing, and now there's kind of this cool role reversal happening, and how is that now that you're building that trust together? And you go from enough experience in situations that have real world consequences, and now you step into like, oh shoot, are they going to be okay if I wear the blue shirt today or the red shirt today, or if I have this brand of shoes versus that brand of shoes? I'm not saying these are totally inconsequential social situations, but you live a life that is truly consequential and you're handling yourself in those settings. All of a sudden the rest starts to feel a bit more trivial if you give yourself permission to see it.
Nice. I want to come back to this whole concept again of the head and the heart, and how one can navigate through that, and also just thinking about how one navigates as a professional in a journey working with people, where like what's coming forward for me is there are these opportunities to work with people and kind of co-create a space where amazing things could potentially happen in a therapeutic relationship. And so I know you're really good at what you do. And so I have the sense that you have witnessed the greatness in your clients, like amazing transformation or shifts in life, that truly, as a practitioner, to be in your total heartfelt vulnerability, I feel like maybe like my perception is it could almost be like overwhelming in the beauty of the humanity of watching a person in front of you move forward and being able to hold a container for that. How, again, like what are there moments in your work where you feel that coming up when you are witnessing somebody just residing in their total humanity?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't always say it, but there's been a few folks I've worked with where I've really tried to express like how much you don't realize how much I'm the lucky one, in the room with the work that they're doing. And when you see, when you
That's
get
beautiful.
to observe someone go from this state of I'm not sure I'm okay, I'm certain I'm not okay, I'm not sure I'm okay, to like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be okay. Like, I'm really going to be okay. There's a transition that happens there. It's tangible in the room. And to witness it on a near regular basis just is truly miraculous. And it's kind of the situation where I'll share, like, you have no idea how beautiful that was for me to observe, and amazing that was for me to observe. And even outside of like traditional therapeutic work, like I'm okay with becoming like emotional in session too. Like if I'm feeling emotional, I'm going to get emotional. I'm not a blank slate. I'm going to be transparent about what I'm feeling, because, so I can model like real life, human being emotional communication, right? But me even being able to say, like, you have no idea how amazing that is, like, to also see then, the kid who's struggling, who's just on the cusp of seeing it but isn't seeing it yet. There are times where I just wish I could just show this person or this family what I've seen occur in so many other families. And I just wish I could just do this mental telepathy to say, I know you can be okay, because you are and you will be and you can be.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's interesting too, just coming back to the point that you made earlier. It's like you actually are okay.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
you don't actually have to do something. You
Yes.
know, it's really the realization of and the residing in, as opposed to some miraculous thing that actually happens to a person
Yeah.
from the outside.
Yeah. It's learning to recognize it. It's there's not a single thing you have to do to be okay. You just are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Um, that's so interesting. So another thing that you talked about a little bit is when we were discussing this before we started recording, is just like the world of the outdoors. We're both here in Boulder, Colorado, where it's kind of the epicenter of the outdoors in many different ways. But one of them that you described is it's kind of the epicenter of the Instagram outdoors. That especially when you live in Boulder, but I know when you live in many places and you look at the representations of the outdoors, they are competitive or high adrenaline, or high adventure, to the point that it can certainly be intimidating and can leave folks with a feeling of kind of not belonging. The guest that I actually talked to last week on the last episode that just came out was really talking about their journey about realizing that what it means to be outdoorsy is not an absolute, and for them to like create their own definition of this outdoorsy, which just then opened this incredible connection for them to the outdoors, which they felt a little bit of a block because they thought they didn't fit the image. So talk a little bit about that, just as far as this idea of, what's in between, like as we spend as a society more and more time outdoors, there's also this percolating up of this portrayal of it as something that might not be accessible to all.
No, right. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. If you jump on Instagram and you look up rock climbing or you look up hiking or you look up outdoor fitness, right, you're going to see a bunch of white, beautiful, probably financially well-off humans, generally speaking. And in this town, maybe things are starting to shift in a direction, but you've got a bunch of white, beautiful, financially well-off people who just have been doing sports since they've been 3 years old. Hilariously, I admitted to you, my son's almost 4, and he's nearly riding a pedal bike now, and I don't understand it, but he is. And right, you take someone who's not white, who's not rich, and who might not have access to the outdoors, and how can you not ask yourself, is this for me? Or maybe even someone who's not even naturally athletic, all right, who's not, just this skinny A-frame figure of a human, that looks like, they've been working out all their life. And I think what comes up for me is when I think about access to the outdoors, in what the outdoor community can do or the outdoor lifestyle can do, it's a way of just simply connecting with something greater than yourself. And that happens parallel to society. So when I think about getting outside, I think about getting outside at my own pace, exactly how I want to, exactly how far I want to go, exactly how low to the ground I want to go. But I am in control of what I do the second I step out on stage. And there's nothing anyone can kind of do to influence me otherwise. Now, I'm also saying that as a white cis male, human. But I think, often what I try to teach, even with some of my kids, who would, let's say, I'd like to be athletic, but I'm just not athletic, right? I'd like to. Years ago, I worked with a kid who was quitting the climbing team because they can only climb V8. they're working on a V10, but they keep falling off. And like I'm going to be a forever V2, V3 boulderer for my entire life. And that's as high as I'm going to go. But I withheld that, knowledge in a ways, but it breaks my heart when I see human beings who don't think the world is for them when it is. And so I think representation is critical here, where we can get it. I also think just finding that person that can bring you to the outdoors if you're not used to it, which is why I love your organization or organizations in Denver, like Big City Mountaineers, where they're like, they're bringing folks that wouldn't otherwise be in the outdoors into the outdoors. Because when all you know is all you know, stepping into the big world is a new place to learn, holy cow, maybe there's more to this life for me. And therapeutically, this is what we cognitive therapists try to do all the time, right? Like, yes, I know what you feel about the situation. I know what you've done about the situation, but there's a bigger world outside of what you've already done. Can we just be willing to consider that there's a new way to think about the scenario that you're not used to thinking about? So you get a human who's never stepped out on a trail, or has never hiked to the top of a mountain, or never hugged a tree, or never planted a flower, or never put their hands in the dirt and said, look what I made, or look how cool, or never put their nose up to a ponderosa pine and ask themselves, does it smell like vanilla or butterscotch? The world will only be as small as you let it until you allow the world to be bigger than you know it. And I just, it's my wish for everyone to know that the outdoor community is for you. Whether you're the first place athlete or, probably the last place athlete. Yeah. Maybe I'll start an Instagram handle called the last place athletes.
The last place athlete.
Yeah.
I'll be your first like on that one.
My first like on my last place. Sounds great.
Exactly. I mean, it's funny for me because I actually found the outdoors because I was just I never found my place not in the outdoors. I didn't fit in team sports. I was not athletic in a non-outdoor setting. And so that real sense of individual opportunity and individual challenge by choice was something that I, even from a really young age, was quite attracted to, is just like my own journey as opposed to a comparative one. Well, Eddie, I so appreciate you sharing all your perspectives. It's great to hear more about your journey as a practitioner and as a human, as an athlete, as a father, and kind of how they all combine together into this path through life. I feel that folks are lucky when they have an opportunity to work with you or a person like you to be in a setting of growth. Just things you said about being able to kind of witness somebody in their glory of transformation is I could see in your face, just like the savoring of those moments and beyond. So I just really have great gratitude for you today, and both for your work and your time today.
Yeah, likewise. The respect is very, very mutual, and I can't wait to see where everything goes and where you take things. Yeah, thanks for doing the work that you do.
You bet. Have a great one.
All right, cheers.
I hope you enjoyed hearing from this avid adventurer as much as I did. Join me every week as we continue to explore the inner landscapes and outer accomplishments of our guests. And if you know someone who you think would make a great interview, please reach out to me at the email in the show notes. I look forward to reconnecting next week.